Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for rejoining us. We hope you enjoyed your lunch and had the opportunity to network and ignite some excitement about community energy planning and energy opportunities. I think our speakers did a really good job today of sort of leading us through where we're headed or where we could be headed. So the afternoon portion of the summit, we want to begin with a panel. So this is a Q&A session with our speakers from this morning. As well, we do have two moderators. So Amanda Smits, who you met earlier, from Brock University. She holds a Master of Education from Brock University. Good for you. And is the Center Administrator for the Environmental Sustainability Research Center, where much of her work focuses on project management of the multiple innovative community partnerships the center has formed over the past 6 years, including acting as staff co-lead on all initiatives related to sustainability at Brock. That's a big job. Her master's research focused on post-secondary sustainability policies in practice, and she has completed the Certificate in Knowledge Mobilization through the University of Guelph. We also have Taryn Wilkinson here from Niagara College. She is the Manager of Sustainability at Niagara College, managing the Office of Sustainability and acting as a catalyst for organizational sustainability in all areas of the college. Another huge job. Also teaching part-time in the Niagara College School of Environmental and Horticultural Studies. Taryn specializes in sustainability reporting, planning, change management, and environmental audits, and volunteers in the community, including the Colleges and Institutes Canada Scope 3 Technical Working Group. That's a big name. And the Niagara Region Climate Action Network Coordinating Committee. In 2010, she completed her Bachelor of Arts with honors in tourism and environment from Brock University. Another Brock University grad. Okay. Graduate certificate in environmental management and assessment from Niagara College in 2011, and a master's of environment and business from the University of Waterloo in 2020. So they will be our moderators for the panel this afternoon. I hope you enjoy.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. So this afternoon portion of the summit, we're going to begin with a panel discussion with our 5 guests from this morning. Amanda and I will be posing some additional questions to the speakers about the work that they do in energy and in the different sectors, and how we're contributing to climate action and a socially just transition to a low-carbon economy. So the insights you all provided this morning were so interesting from various perspectives, and I think a lot of us are constantly trying to understand how collaboration within projects can facilitate or get us a little bit further faster. So how has the community response been to the shift from conventional energy sources to alternative energy sources, and what sort of partnerships have contributed to the success that you've seen within your projects? Who wants to go first?
Is this a free-for-all?
It's a free-for-all, yes.
So the community could be like anyone, associations, public.
Absolutely.
Definitely most of them are very supportive, but also helpful in spreading the word. Most of the engagements that we have are with the community. We actually haven't moderated or run our own event or webinar, not even once, in this past few years. It's always been with the community, and it's always been, very organic. You go to more events, you meet more people, you're able to spread the word. So very helpful, the community, in every way, shape, and form. And it's interesting the types of organizations and groups from the community that approach us or that we somehow find. Architects, professional engineers, apartment associations, all sorts of different groups. And they all do a really great job in helping our message and helping just in general with climate change.
Thank you. Who else wants to jump in? Mary?
I'll jump in. Our community, it's it's always changing. We don't have the same students one year after the other. When you have to realize they are here for year one, they're here for 4 years, and then they move on, and we have a brand new group of students starting. So it's always changing. So that has been one of the challenges in making sure that we maintain that constant messaging. But every year, with the new students coming in, since we have had the challenges and the app, they have been very engaged in participating in the competitions. It has been a well-received initiative, what we're doing on climate change and equity and poverty reduction and everything else that we're doing. It has been very well received. The partnership, and we were talking about it after lunch, we did partner with a company. We went for a competitive procurement process. That gentleman there was his vision, Drew Cullen, the manager of our district energy system. He had this vision for the app. He had an idea of what we wanted to do and how it was supposed to look. So we went out to Merck's. We found a partner to work with, and that company ended up, we selected Blackstone Energy Services, and they helped us really put together Drew's vision with what the campus needed and what we wanted. And that's how we ended up with a very successful app. Now the energy management system that we have, York, Queens, McMaster, Conestoga College, and another one that escapes me, they are trying to use the very same system that we developed, the same dashboard and app. Now they are going to use it. So it's something that we can see. It transcends not only the Brock community, but it's now reaching the university community across Ontario.
Thanks, Mary.
I'll take a stab at this from the transit perspective. So I would define our community as obviously our ridership, but the larger community being all of the residents and taxpayers of the various municipalities within the region of York. So in terms of some of the outreach that we've done that we've found has been beneficial is, so not everybody in the region is on a bus. We're trying to transition people out of their cars with better transit options, so it's a viable choice for them in their daily travels. But there is still a large percentage of the population that uses a car, whether it's a gas, diesel, EV, whatever it would be. So to get some buy-in from those that aren't on the transit service, some of the things that we found is really getting them to understand that there's other benefits to their communities and the environment with this transition, namely emissions is the first one. The second one that does come up from time to time which is kind of a spin-off, is noise. Like I mentioned earlier, there's significantly less noise, almost near zero, on an electric bus versus a diesel bus, which for those not in my backyard sector of the population, really allows them to kind of that's opening the door to the technology, and then you explain to them all the other benefits on the emission. So our corporate communications folks and our marketing team has kind of tailored messaging to both the community as a whole, as well as our ridership on the technology and the benefits. So that's something that's been helpful. The one piece that's kind of, I think it's for everybody in this room in a different degree, is finding a way to present that green premium, which we're dealing with now on all of these technologies for the most part, the transition, the additional costs, some of the unforeseens, the uncertainty around delivery and availability of parts or components for the technology to be implemented. There's a lot of reluctance or hesitancy on that. So I think leaving no stone unturned in analysis and presenting it to people in like a digestible manner has helped us get some buy-in from whether it's local or regional councilors, some other groups within like ratepayers associations within York Region. Everyone needs to kind of understand that there's a vision that we have to get to, and these are the benefits. Yes, there's a cost premium, but if we work together and kind of identify ways to mitigate or eliminate some of these risks, the actual benefits are going to outweigh anything that we're doing now or any incremental steps that you would have to take. The one thing that's a little bit different as well for transit is that there are some mandates that help us in one way, I guess, where top down from the province and the federal government, there are some mandates that, certain things have to transition. So that, not to say, takes the, we're not the bad guy in all, in all circumstances, So we have to kind of explain to our local residents that there's, certain things that we have to abide by, and we're trying to get there in the most, fiscally responsible way. But, this is happening, and this is how we're going to get there, and, these are the benefits for everybody involved. So that's what I would share on this particular question.
That's great.
I'll just quickly add, the community that we are, we're a business-to-business type company, so our community would be municipalities and developer and owners. The municipalities, we do most of our work in Toronto, so I heard reference the Toronto Green Standard, but the way that municipalities at a community level can make sure that the building standards are improving thus is amazing. I'll also say that the development community, who have been very hesitant to move ahead, are changing and are starting to embrace these technologies.
That's great. Thank you all. We should have said at the beginning, too, we'll try to hold about 10 minutes at the end for all of you to ask your own questions, because Taryn and I got to make these ones up, but we're happy to take your questions at the end as well. So you all spoke about lessons learned earlier today, and obviously I hope you knew there was going to be a question around obstacles. So what major obstacles have you encountered in reaching carbon reduction goals and implementing community energy plans, or pieces related to community energy plans?
I'll start by dovetailing into my last question, where I was showing some optimism around the development community. There's also been very slow to react and slow to change the way they're doing things. Developers are risk-averse organizations. They don't want, we've built boilers, chillers, and cooling towers forever. Why change now? So that has definitely been an obstacle. Again, something that Enwave brings is we're a very large institutional company. We help de-risk these things. We're trying to counter that by being that player in the market. But that is notably has been and will continue to be an obstacle.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, there's no other obstacles. This is great. This is going to be so easy, everyone. Go ahead, Gil.
I think in terms of like retrofit technologies or just energy technologies in general, in terms of decarbonization, there are so many obstacles. But I think as we continue, as technology develops, it's already good. It's already almost better. I wanted to say as it gets better, but it's pretty much already there. It's just the more it shows up and the more we are able to complete successful projects, and the more we're able to showcase those successful projects to show every kind of key stakeholder and decision maker that yes, this works. It's financially viable. The equipment works. The life cycles are great, and so yeah, it's very challenging. But the more we communicate and the more we kind of talk about it and showcase these projects, I think the more those obstacles will be kind of shattered, broken down.
I think that communication piece is key, and all of you kind of touched on that through your presentations this morning too, which is great.
I would definitely agree with Gil about the technologies are there, and we have experienced that firsthand, where we tried solar thermal, solar PV on another project. We have even looked at hydrogen for the engines, so when we run them, we want to run them on hydrogen. Unfortunately, Enbridge right now, they can supply us hydrogen on the pipeline, and we looked at what would we need to do if we store hydrogen here on site, and then that does require far more space than what we have. And some of those constraints, and when it comes to retrofits, the retrofits of the buildings themselves, having a fleet of buildings from the 1960s, brutalist architecture, there's very little you can do to those envelopes. So we're addressing the part of the puzzle, the generation part of the puzzle, but the challenge remains the loads, the building side of the equation.
On our end, specific to fleet, on the transit side of things, one of the major obstacles is what we've been hearing about in the news really for the past couple of years is supply chain, manufacturing capacity, skilled workforce, all of those things kind of converging at a time when we're trying to, onboard and implement new technology, which has made it extremely difficult to kind of scale up with any certainty. So, using the manufacturing of a bus as an example, timelines for a diesel bus would have been, 9 months you could get a diesel bus as an example, and now we're into 18 to 24 months for an electric bus, and it's the supply chain, it's the manufacturing capacity, it's the skilled workforce required to kind of manufacture at a rate that provides some certainty for transit agencies. And digging into that a little bit deeper in terms of how it impacts our ability to kind of transition is, timeline, schedule, obviously impacted. If we can't, with any certainty receive our fleet when we need them, timelines get pushed out. And as a result, in some instances, we end up having an older diesel bus, perhaps, emitting, diesel exhaust for a longer period of time on street when it's at like the tail end of its service life. So that's one thing that we're trying to plan for and do things in a way that we have a little bit more certainty. The other obstacle, I would say, it comes down to, at least in our particular municipality, is funding and being able to, with confidence, put together budgets that account for all of these expenditures, both on the capital and the operating side.
Thank you. So we've talked a little bit about like the systems changes, we've talked about the organizational change, but how does the shift to clean energy also align with your organizational or maybe your municipality or your regional goals? And what future improvement opportunities do you foresee, either through some of those larger systems changes that we're waiting or maybe some of the supply chain issues that we're waiting to get caught up? Any feedback on that?
In terms of alignment to our organizational sustainability objectives, low carbon at this point, going forward, is all we do. I mean, we just released our vision statement, which is to be the partner of choice for the transition to the low carbon economy in buildings, and to make it cost effective. So it's perfectly aligned. But that's probably a kind of a biased answer because it's probably more complex if you're a municipality or a higher educational institution.
For us, the projects that we are doing these days, electrification and everything that we are looking at, it's a perfect tie to our sustainability objectives. We have adopted, as of this year, a target of 75% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030. So it's very ambitious. We think it's possible. So it's a perfect alignment, but we have a lot of work to do beyond what we're already doing, and we see opportunities in the buildings themselves. Like I mentioned, that's something that we haven't really gotten to the depths of it, and that's where we find that the new opportunities and the new phase will be at.
I think with us, there's different levels of alignment. Like I work in a small business unit out of the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. So like STEP in itself, we're a very research and communication focused entity. And we want to help our partner organizations in their alignment. So in however way we can do that, education, measurement and verification, design charrettes, case studies, feasibility studies, that sort of stuff. Organizationally, the TRCA, we do have quite a large staff and lots of kind of buildings within our stock. We also have dozens of single-family homes, actually, that are on our conservation lands that we rent out. So there's a lot that we're trying to do to align with our neighbors in terms of regional and municipal levels. So yeah, alignment is key, but also helping all those other organizations to align as well.
Yeah, and on our end, so like I mentioned before, we do have a guiding vision to be net zero by 2051. There's some strategic plans at the Region of York to to highlight initiatives that'll help us get there. The one thing so there's definitely alignment across the organization and support top down from our regional council to our senior management team. The one benefit that kind of came from at least our journey is that we were a little bit ahead of some of our other fleet and facility groups. Within our organization, there was historically fleet and facility managers for different business units, just because the complexity of the group. As an example, EMS, we have paramedic services, fleet vehicles and facilities. There's police services as well, so police vehicle services, and some other specialized equipment for road traffic and operations. We all kind of operated independently, but collaborated on corporate initiatives. But what this kind of journey has kind of led the organization to do is to present these things as an organization as a whole. So, as an example, as we've been going as Transit to present our case, we've been working with the other units within our organization, and kind of set a consistent, kind of like a standard message, so that when we're going to our council seeking approvals, the same story is being told, or the same set of information presented in a way that is familiar, whether it's police services looking for money to transition their vehicles, or EMS with the paramedics. That's really helped the organization kind of align, and it's all around that net zero. And also because we're all kind of dealing with the same sector in terms of, as an example, battery packs and charging equipment. It's there's a set group out there that in the industry that's out there that we're engaging with. So we're able to kind of leverage those conversations and opportunities to kind of give our other groups a heads up, or a leg up on their journey as well. So that's really helped out, and I don't think that would have happened if we didn't have the overarching kind of plan to kind of keep everyone pointing in the right direction. So whatever organization you're in, I think that's probably a good thing to do.
Kind of segued into our next question, Richard, so that's great. We're just wondering if you all can share, and some of you have already kind of spoken to a few of these things, but can you share kind of the most effective outreach strategies you've used so far for educating the public, or in Jeff's case, maybe customers, about GHG emission reductions projects that you've led? I know it's kind of a loaded question.
I think for us, it's been mainly like the question you asked earlier. It's been the community. It's been interested parties, and then kind of they talk to their friends. It's kind of organic. I do some cold calling myself. We find now that there's lots of other organizations, kind of Canada-wide, North America-wide, provincially as well, that are these kind of NGO think tank kind of organizations that are also doing heat pump and decarbonization research. It's hard to keep up sometimes with all of the data and research that's coming out there, but it's like, I think just this year alone, I've just, something's been come across my feed or come across my desk, and I'm literally like, how do I talk to these people? And so it's literally, finding the people that are doing similar work, but then also it's the community really that helps.
Gil, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. Sorry, don't pass it along yet. So in your case, I know some of the people you talk to are contractors. Have you found like champions in certain contractors that have gone out and kind of been advocates for what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All of the contractors that when we did our case studies, those 7 case studies that I highlighted, we talked to, I think, all but one of the contractors that did those jobs. I think there was one repeat, but all of them were separate. We've also had many contractors and contractor associations. Like there's HRAI, which is the biggest contractor association Canada-wide. We presented at their heat pump symposium last April. There's also I'm not going to name names, but there's like co-ops
Okay.
of HVAC contractors that are really into heat pumps and decarbonization. And we've done webinars for them. They've given their members our information. And so, yeah, I was talking to my peers at the table earlier about contractors, and I won't say exactly what we said, but there is a generation of contractors that is going to be hard to
convert. Yeah.
convert.
Yeah.
But there are a lot that are on board.
That's great. Anyone else want to talk about effective strategies?
So if I do take your lead and sort of say outreach to businesses, maybe it sounds obvious, but listening, because there's no one size fits all. I'm generally, when I'm engaging with an organization, it's not about, I mean, today was kind of a presentation, but in general, it's what are you trying to achieve? What are your goals? What are your drivers? What are the problems that you're having? Because there's many solutions you could chase, some that are zero carbon or net zero carbon day one, some that are more geared to a slower transition but can still transition. So I think listening is a big one. And then if I was going to zoom out to engagement more broadly, if I'm given the opportunity to chat with people, there's a lot of dire items around climate change, no doubt. But we also need some hope, some optimism, and to know that there's opportunity and there's paths to do that. So just highlighting that it's not all doom and gloom, but we do have to take it seriously.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have a lot of people who come to you who actually don't know what they want? Like, are they always able to answer all of those questions?
Well, many of the developers kind of cynically, if I was cynical,
Yeah.
I would say, well, they just want to make them the best return, period.
Yeah.
But they are looking to ESG to mitigate risk, to show their stakeholders, and that's a broad group of stakeholders, that they're trying to make a difference. Like, for example, we were purchased by the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. Their constituents are stakeholders, the teachers themselves, who are pushing their pension fund to say, divest of the dirty stuff and invest in clean. Part of the reason they invested in us. So, it's bi-directional.
Yeah, it's a business strategy too.
Yeah.
For sure.
For us, the outreach has several layers. Internally, we find certainly the phone, social media, the app, everything that's that the students, which is the vast majority of our community, use. They are, if it's not on the phone, they're not paying attention. So we certainly find that anything online, website, social media, app, all of that really goes a long way with our own internal student community for the most part, and even with staff and faculty as well. When it comes to outreach beyond Brock, so again, thinking of Ontario universities and colleges, we invest a lot of time in working with them. We have a significant voice at the Ontario Association of Physical Plant Administrators. We actually hosted the university's conference here in late May this year. So we are very active, we are vocal, and we advocate for the whole province. We have gone, as Brock, but also on behalf of OAPA, created precedent with the Ontario Energy Board in making some of the changes regarding standby rates, and we might have to do it again. So we have that outreach that then also it's not only Brock, we're partnering with all institutions, we're advocating for everyone, and then we have a bigger voice. And last but not least, I think the outreach is really close to what Jeff was saying about talking to people. We are so happy in our little circle doing our own stuff every day. We need to go out there. We need to listen to what the market is providing, what the opportunities are, to open ourselves to the new technologies, new models, new ways to procure projects, to do projects. So we do need to do that work also to educate ourselves, to remain current, so that we can actually find those partners for the next project and the next initiative that we want to undertake.
Yeah, for sure. Richard, anything?
Yeah, no problem. So on our end, a lot of what we do, obviously being a regional municipality, is with our regional councillors, our local councillors. So what we've done over the past few years is a bit of a roadshow, I would say. So we have been out to local council, we have been out to chambers of commerce, been to regional council, doing presentations on the technology, And we do have the benefit in our case really of providing them with a tangible piece of equipment that they can come out and see, being the electric bus. So, giving them an orientation or a walkthrough of the technology, taking them out to some of our properties where they can get an understanding of the bus itself, the charging infrastructure, the back-end bus garage kind of improvements that are being made to kind of provide them with a sense of the magnitude of the undertaking first, so they can understand, it's not just, a bus shows up on the road and everything behind the scenes that's in concert with, that whole net zero goal. There's a lot going on. So a lot of the, like I said, face-to-face meetings. There's also been some marketing campaigns for the public as well, both digital, traditional print, that kind of stuff, for customers who ride our service to kind of, outline the benefits for them. And same thing on our webpage, there's information regarding the technology and our plans. There's also been most recently, I think in the past year or so, some of the municipalities within our region are doing their own, and I guess it's because, everybody's kind of aligned under the same goal. They're doing their own kind of symposiums or forums for the public for different things, like energy saving for your home, programs, EV charging programs, and we've been invited to bring our bus out to community centers, arenas, things of that nature, to kind of demonstrate what it is. And that's more so for the public who isn't aware, because they're in their car most of the time, and they can understand that this is a benefit to them for the environmental impacts, as well as something positive that their taxpayers or dollars are working towards. So all those tools, I guess, is kind of what we're working now, and I know we're working on finding a way for future outreach as we scale up, because we're going to be reaching a larger area within the municipality. Right now, our electric bus is predominantly in the northern area of the region, so the population down in the southern municipalities might not be familiar with it. There could be different demographics, concerns, things of that nature. So we're really going to tailor the outreach to them based on things that have worked in the past for similar initiatives.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you all. All of the answers are so insightful, and I think are inspiring hope, Jeff, not doom and gloom, which is really nice. We do have time for questions from the audience, so anyone who didn't find these lovely people at lunch and ask them their questions, Taryn, do we have the extra mic? Perfect. We will take the mic around. Does anyone have questions for the panelists? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be around the questions we formed. They've answered everything. Oh, we got one.
Thank you so much for your answers today. My name is Lindsay, and I represent the business improvement area in downtown St. Catharines, so I'm coming from the small business perspective today. One of the main roles that we do downtown is write a lot of grants. So you had mentioned, Richard, the Zero Emissions Transit Fund. So I'm kind of curious, and I'll make it a little bit more broad. So when it comes to grant writing and financing projects, what sort of role does the community play in this? Do you write those grants internally, or do you outsource that?
Good question. So for us in particular, and I'll try to be general because it could probably apply to a lot of different things. So nothing is done individually, I guess, obviously. So there was some subject matter experts that were brought in internal to the region to help address a lot of the technical components of the actual application. So we had a team of economists, I guess, that came in and kind of looked at it to deal with the financial piece. We had some data analysts who had to do life cycle costing for the application. There was communications folks, marketing folks who had to prepare the things that we talked about, pretty much the strategy to engage the public. I think the last few grant opportunities that we've seen, both on the federal and provincial side, have always come with very detailed guides that kind of say, this is what we want to see. But, what you present to them is at least in our case, is where we've kind of made sure to put our best foot forward. So not, just the one-liner kind of response, but, try to link everything to the strategic plans and visions that we have. So if we do say, if the question is in and around financials related to, or the ability to implement a project, we're looking at it from the region as a whole, leveraging all of the different tools and resources that we have in that response. And in terms of the community, so a lot of the applications that we've received do require some of the consultation that I think everyone is doing. So Indigenous consultations for a lot of our projects, demonstrating support from local municipalities or anything like that is something that we're able to, just given that we're in government, we're able to do because we have both local and regional endorsed strategies, so we've been able to build that consensus over the years. So if you can do that legwork in advance, and that's kind of where I think we were in a good position, where a lot of what was asked of us in the grant, we were able to kind of we were able to turn around relatively quickly and completely because we put ourselves in that position as an organization to and not be kind of scrambling or looking for how best to answer it with the information that we have. That's the only thing I would say.
No one else uses grants.
We do. I can speak about the one that we got for the electrification project with the Low Carbon Economy Fund. We did that work in-house. We did reach out to an engineering firm just to validate the numbers and to give us a sense of what the prices were in the market. But the rest of the work we did in-house. When it comes to the role that your communities and your partners may have, it's both as an expert that you can go to, and many of the grants now, they don't only take into account cost of the reductions or amount of GHGs removed, but also what else are you bringing to the table? What are those value adds? Indigenous services or maybe environmental or what else? So that's really where some of your stakeholders might have a lot of value when you partner with them, because that would just strengthen your application for those funds. And I don't know exactly how they would be weighting those, but it's something that we see more and more, especially from the federal level when it comes to grants and funding application. It has to have that community and that other stakeholder perspective.
Awesome. I saw a hand go up right here, and you have the mic.
Yes, my name's Sean. I think, is it Jeff? Yep, perfect. I just had a question about, you were mentioning heat pumps for wastewater effluent, and I was wondering, is there ecological benefit as well from removing heat from that effluent? And is it, I guess, a good investment for wastewater treatment plants? Like, would they be able to sort of counterbalance that cost and investment for their facilities?
I would probably find it hard to quantify the benefit of you're reducing the heat that is put into the lake. It can only be good if you're not expelling heat into the lake, but I couldn't quantify that per se. A version of it that we do in Toronto, it's not effluent, but we just put in a fourth intake into the lake, where the first three intakes were drinking water, and this fourth intake would bring raw water in. So we're going to be using that for the same deep lake water cooling, a big expansion of our plant. But then it doesn't go off to the city's drinking water supply. It goes back into the lake. And you could say that we're bringing it in very cold, putting it in warm. It's actually, but it's mainly going to be put in summer to the inner harbor of Toronto that actually has no significant inflows. It's very stagnant water. So we're going to be actually helping to flush out the water. Again, can't quantify it, but benefit. You asked about the benefit for the wastewater treatment facility. I think that the benefit is with the municipality who will run the treatment plant and then tying it into their low carbon goals. So it's an asset that they can put out there to see how it can be utilized. Obviously, the location of the plant with respect to the end user is very, very important. So I referenced that Lakeview Village site, which it's almost next door. Almost. You're still having to run quite a bit of pipe to connect it, but that's what's making it cost effective. We've looked at the Humber treatment plant in Toronto and some potential, but it was harder to make that one go because of the length of the pipe. So the answer will be different for everyone, but I just invite you to at least start with some feasibility and look at the benefit and then take it from there.
Oh, go ahead.
We heard from the minister today about what they're doing for the future with regards to electrification in the grid. How does in each one of your portfolios, how does your portfolio impact the grid as it stands now? And in some cases, can you put back into the grid?
I can start. So in Toronto, we are delivering currently about 40,000 tons worth of cooling via deep lake water cooling. It's now going to be expanded for an additional 26,000 tons. Without N-Wave, that would have to be delivered electrically. So that is a massive impact on the amount of downtown Toronto is an electricity constrained area. So that's one way that we are assisting the electrical grid, that is. And we also, we're looking at, there's air source heat pumps and then there's water source heat pumps. Both can be amazing low carbon technologies. One of the things with an air source heat pump is that as it gets really cold, its efficiency gets lower, and so that does take more electricity, whereas ground source will always be high efficiency. And then we're having conversations, very early stages, with folks maybe like in the ISO, to say that if this would help by as everything electrifies to have a lot less electrical requirements to run the heat pumps, you might want to work on maybe incentivizing ground source. But I also don't want to take away from air source, which is just an amazing low carbon technology in and of itself.
So good question. So from our end, that was one of the early questions that we had to answer for our plan with our local utilities, so that they can then take back to on their end in terms of planning purposes to make commitments and let us know what would be available to us, when it would be available to us, and the costs associated with it. So our feasibility study kind of outlined what the ultimate state for our fleet would be in terms of consumption. We have 3 or 4 different bus garages that are going to be electrified, so we had kind of the geographical area. What we presented to our local utilities, so Electra Utilities is one of them. Newmarket Hydro is another utility. Both of them are partially owned by the local municipalities within the region. So there's some, I guess, support inherently in what they're trying to do and what we're trying to deliver. What we did hear from them is that they are able to provide the capacity. They appreciated the planning efforts, because then on their end they could take that to IESO and make sure that they were ready. They did outline the capital cost contribution for this type of an asset that they would have to kind of support at each of our garages. And then we've been working with them since to kind of optimize what we're trying to do at each of our garages before we begin the actual construction. And on that note, similarly, there's a couple things that are kind of in our favor with our technology, our business. One being, we typically fuel our buses in the overnight periods, and in this case, in a transition to electric, we'd be plugging in off-peak anyways. So there were some benefits there. The way that we're proposing to run our service doesn't require a lot of peak day usage, with the exception of some en route chargers in a full build out. So that helped us out as well. And we're also looking into some of those potential battery energy storage systems at our sites with solar PV for our own operational needs to further assist on the peak shaving. But there are avenues, with some of our utilities to feed back into the system if needed, but we just haven't got to that point yet.
For Brock, we used to sell power to the grid. We are not doing that anymore. When the plant was renovated, we decided to change the structure with Electra. So now we consume everything, and we have very strict requirements on not to export, but that's by choice. We do see electricity as a major player, but just for Brock at least, a transitional fuel, if you may. We don't see electrifying everything on the campus because we have come across several research stating how we have to double or even triple the capacity of the grid in Ontario just to supply. If every single thermal load was going to become electric, there's no way that we can do that. Just a few weeks back in Toronto, we were hearing the CEO of Toronto Hydro talk about how the prices will increase by 20% per year at this rate if we don't do anything. Just there's going to be a massive gap between supply and demand of electricity in the province. So we can't only rely on electricity. So we are going to be, for a while, for a few hours, we are going to be demanding more from the grid than what we were. We're still not going to supply anything back, but we only see this as a transition. We are going to be making changes to our controls narrative, how we run the district energy system, the buildings, to minimize that impact on the grid, but always keeping in mind this is the transition. This is what we get to the position where we can use hydrogen, where we can incorporate renewables. It's just our transition, and it will be a major component, but it's just one of many components that we envision for our facility.
The key pathway towards decarbonization, I believe, is electrification. It has to be electrification. It's the easiest way. I mean, currently, there are other solutions, but it's all going to be electrification. I hear many times people tell me, like, oh, if everybody's going to get a heat pump and everyone's going to get an EV, then the whole distribution system is going to collapse. It's not happening all at once. Not all the vehicles on the road right now are electric. Something like less than 5% are. So this is going to happen very gradually, and we really hope that the distributors, the generators, the transmission operators, the OEB, all these key players have a hand in deciding what future generation looks like. So what's really key is to ensure that future generation is green and renewable. The other thing that's important, useful when we do electrify, is now we have more control. With EVs, now all of a sudden every single household has energy storage. They have grid capabilities where they didn't have it before. And so it's up for the utilities to now start thinking about those models to help those EV drivers and owners in order to also help the distribution system as well and decarbonize.
Awesome. We have time for one more question. I think it's right here.
Hello. My name is Katie. I'm from the NPCA. My question is about sustainability, but less about carbon emissions. It's more about materials and resources. Do any of your organizations have plans or best practices on how to deal with, say, the waste of decommissioning older systems? Like, I think of decommissioning 700 diesel buses. Where does that go? Or when you are choosing to do a project, do you specifically select certain materials or items with the fact that they are sourced in more of a green way?
For us, we had to face that question ourselves for the electrification project. When we first conceived the project, we were thinking of getting a 1 megawatt hour battery. When we started to learn more about them and the life cycle and all of the lithium and the mining and then disposing of them, we decided, no, this is not going to work, because what we are gaining here, we're going to be wasting on materials. So, and that's the reason why we are going to make operational changes on our end to do the same things that we were going to do with the battery for some of the project. So it is front and center. We haven't really gotten into the embodied carbon when it comes to building materials, but it's something that we are looking into, we are learning more about. And again, just the battery was a great example because it became so front and center for us. It was an eye-opening, and we expect to see more and more of that in the coming years.
Within TRCA, there's a sister business unit called PPG, which is Partners in Project Green, and they have like some eco-waste programs that they run for local businesses across the GTA and GTHA, and there's some really cool programs that happen there. One is to like recircle used goods. So I know there's like a board where you can sign on to, and literally there's, you know, office buildings that have to move, and now all of a sudden there's like 500 really good office chairs that somebody was just going to dump, and then another organization takes it on. So we have that program which we run. And in general, though, like you mentioned the buses, which you'll probably comment on, but in most cases with energy retrofits, I always like to encourage that the retrofits happen at end of life. And so there should already be a plan in place of what happens to that waste. It's not like we are trying to create new waste in, you know, like you have to retrofit this now. Usually it's planned within life cycle assessments and end of life. Same thing goes for homeowners too. We tell them, you know, get your energy audit, or at least be prepared to, so that when your equipment does die, you're kind of ready to make a decision.
Good question. Tough question too. So I'll split it out into two different sides. So on the diesel bus, or our current fleet, we do have a decommissioning process at end of life for all of our buses. And really what the decommissioning process is, you know, it's a procurement document that goes out with certain standards in there in terms of how we would like to see our bus be decommissioned. For the most part, it ends up in salvage, so a lot of the metal mass, mechanical components, things are broken down and stripped down and recycled as best as they can be. Certain mechanical components are refurbished and used in other markets, which is allowable, and that's how we've been dealing with our diesel fleet for the past years. On the electric battery side, I think that's where I say it's a tough question, and it's something that I think everyone in the industry, even, you know, car manufacturers, are grappling with. So there's a scarcity in the resource itself in terms of mining to, you know, develop these batteries. So everyone's fighting for the same, you know, resources and trying to manufacture and put out products that people buy. But on the tail end, there isn't a lot of, as far as we've seen in terms of industry scan, a lot of people looking to recycle because I think the batteries at the end of life, because there aren't really, there's a lot of time and money required to extract what you need to then recycle and repurpose. But I think in this case, at least what we're looking for in our future procurement for our electric bus is stating what we would like to see from either a refurb of a battery or a recycle program for a battery, so that we know at the end of life where our batteries are going. I think in this case, where we are at now, you know, progress is better than perfection. I don't think you're going to be able to, you know, at least now, find any way to fully recycle things like batteries on the electric bus. But we'll take those steps along our journey to make sure that we're always trying to find the best way to kind of recycle these things, so we're not just you know, sticking with the initial kind of approach. But yeah, good question.
My answer is probably a lot less interesting. We're an energy generator. However, I would just simply say build it to last. We've been around since the 1960s and plan to be around to 2160 and beyond. When we build our infrastructure, it's deep tunnels. It's meant to last a very, very long time. Geothermal, geo-exchange, the pipes, we know they last about 50 years. Potentially they could last 100 years. There really isn't an end of life, so build to last.
Thank you all so much. Can we get a round of applause for our panelists?
Thank you all, and you can come down from the panel, and it's a very interesting and enriching discussion. So much to learn from you all. So our next speaker is Matthew Day. Where are you, Matt? Oh, there you are. Matthew is the director of Waterloo Region's Community Energy Program. Waterloo Region Community Energy is a partnership between 8 local municipalities and utilities and is designed to coordinate the local clean and equitable energy transition. His work focuses on incubating municipal scale projects that integrate energy and land use policies. Current projects include a harmonized green development standard, something we've been hearing about today, and developing a low carbon thermal strategy. Previously, Matthew spent a decade managing a voluntary corporate greenhouse gas emission reporting program with Sustainable Waterloo Region. Matthew holds an MA in Urban and Economic Geography from the University of Toronto, and he lives in downtown Kitchener. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much. It's good to see everybody. Truthfully, I don't speak outside of Waterloo Region to a general audience very often. As such, can I get a quick show of hands? Who here works for an upper tier municipality? Okay, and a lower tier municipality? By the way, they hate it when I say that in Waterloo Region. They want to, what's the better word? Local area municipality, that's what they want. They've had us rewrite entire plans before because we use the word lower tier municipality. So let's not make that mistake again. Does anybody work for a utility? Oh, Jeff does. Anybody else? There's that awesome question about the power grid. That was a smart question. Oh, okay, great. Electric or natural gas? Electric. Electric, great. And I know there's some hospital folks here. Oh, only one, okay. Okay, great. And industry, like the development industry. Okay. So this will largely be a municipal-led conversation. Questions at the end, but also feel free to interrupt me at any point. Usually I speak with smaller groups, and there's always a bit of a back and forth. It's harder here, but don't be shy. Okay, so let's get on with it. I will talk, there'll be 2 general bits of my presentation. One is about WR Community Energy, and then I'll give you, part 2 will be about an example of what we're working on and how we work. The region of Waterloo realized we needed an energy strategy in 2014. They spent 4 years researching it and developing it with our partners, with the area municipalities and the utilities. It ended up being called the Community Energy Investment Strategy. They were a smart region. They still are. They realized that the region was not the best group to implement a regional community-wide energy strategy. So they created a partnership. That partnership is now called WR Community Energy. The structure looks like this. We have a governance committee made up of directors and commissioners from the upper and lower tier municipalities and the presidents of all of the local utilities. We used to have 5, now we only have 4. And then there's staff. I'm one of them, and we do most of our work through these 4 working groups. Right now, all of our work is in 2 working groups, the Land Use and Development Working Group, aka Green Development Standards, and then a Priority Projects Working Group, and that means looking at electrifying our thermal energy. So I work in the energy transition. We're supposed to transition the energy usage in Waterloo Region. Here's what I talk about when I talk about the energy transition. The first thing I say is, if water is life, energy is quality of life. And then I give a variety of examples of how when energy systems have changed, the urban and municipal environment changes drastically. The economy changes, the buildings change, social habits change. In Waterloo Region, we were farmers. We had no way of importing energy, so we developed where the energy was. In our case, it was a 2-meter waterfall. And that was enough to grist mill or grist wheat and saw stuff. Those were much better use of energy. A farmer would spend a week, milling his or gristing his wheat, where it would take an hour at a grist mill. So it was just much energy efficient. Then we got the rail. We realized we can import energy. So then where we had these, this environment, we imported coal that allowed for industrialization. And you see that all over the place. I'm sure St. Catharines is no different. Early smokestacks in industry. In 2016, Kitchener was the very first community to get electricity from Niagara Falls outside of its immediate area. So then we could build elevators, we could build street lights. All of a sudden, things were safe. It was safe to be outside at night. Nightlife developed, elevators we could build higher, all sorts of fun stuff that comes with electricity. When really we started mass-producing vehicles, that led to suburbanization, obviously low-dense stuff. And then now in Waterloo Region, we're trying to get rid of all of the negative consequences of that fossil fuels. We're starting to electrify our transportation, thankfully. Here's our beautiful Ion. We will continue largely decarbonizing, and someone said earlier, that largely, although not exclusively, means electrifying our energy. Waves of municipal climate leadership. The more that we develop the science, we understand that climate change is important and the need to take action, while nationally our governments let us down. The municipalities have a history of stepping up their game. The first corporate targets in Canada, I think, was from Toronto. They had a 20% reduction target, 20% below 1988 levels by 1995. Eventually, everybody had those targets. The FCM had a 20% club that we could all participate in. We quickly realized that wasn't enough. There was Kyoto fell down. There was Paris fell down. So every time that happened, the municipalities stepped up their game. Seattle was really big when the United States left the Kyoto Protocol. But anyway, over time, the municipalities stepped up their game. They started developing community targets and integrating action plans within those targets. Then they started getting institutional action. N-Wave is an example of that. N-Wave started off as 4 hospitals sharing heat in 1968, I think. Then it moved to the University of Toronto and then the Parliament buildings. The City of Toronto bought it in '99. They developed it further with this deep lake cooling, and then they sold it to N-Wave in 2012. Something like that. Brookfield, and then Brookfield, whatever. Anyway, but the point is, the City of Toronto, again, was leading in Ontario, at least, with institutional action for actually implementing their climate change. According to this theorist, her name is Sarah Hughes, she says the next step in municipal climate leadership will be around advocacy. This was a big deal in COP15 when municipalities were invited to actually talk about climate action and climate leadership. My work, WR Community Energy, is Waterloo Region's attempt to move beyond community targets and into the institutional action phase of this municipal leadership. And also, I think we're here to celebrate Niagara Region for also moving into that level of action as well with their community action plan. So congratulations to Niagara. Okay, that's the context. How do we operate? So generally, we localize national trends. We understand what that means for Waterloo Region. We do our own research. We develop some ideas, some potential. And when we see potential, then we begin to actually incubate large-scale projects. Now, rarely does Waterloo Region lead projects. Most of the time, there's smarter people in the community who can do a much better job. So we've conducted a bunch of research about open loop geoexchange, about wastewater treatment, about biogas, industrial waste heat. So those are our research projects on the left. We've incubated currently 3 projects. One is on developing a harmonized green development standard. This is neat, I think, because the 3 cities, the 4 area municipalities, the upper tier, and the utilities are all partnering together to create one harmonized green development standard for all of Waterloo region. I think this would be the first rural net zero green development standard that would be developed in Ontario, so we're excited about that. Downtown Kitchener is in advanced stages of planning for a district energy system. We started that work in 2009. We thought, well, let's look at this whole district energy thing. Are there opportunities in Waterloo region? So we identified 12 sites. We focused on one. We developed it as far as we can. When it was clear that there was potential, then we passed it off to a group who could do a better job. In this case, it was the city of Kitchener. We led some preliminary research on what a deep energy retrofit program would look like in Waterloo region. That's now called Retrofit WR. And we have others pending. If those feds would ever just let us know whether we got those grants or not. How many people are waiting on federal grants right now? Yeah, we're waiting on 2 at least, and it's taken a long, long time. So how do we know what to incubate? I got these, we call these the 3 pillars of the energy transition. I stole these directly from a City of Toronto presentation that I heard. They mentioned them orally in a presentation. I went online to find out their definitions of these 3 pillars. Couldn't find them anywhere, but they made sense to me at the presentation, and they still make sense to me now. So this is how we know that we're not greenwashing, that we're not making promises that we can't deliver. So all of our projects need to feed directly into one of these 3 pillars. The first is market-based solutions, then we have policy, and then the third is infrastructure. So we need to actively, tangibly help developers build good stuff, more efficient buildings, generate energy. We need to develop policies like green development standards or waste energy transfer policies or what have you. Or we need to build infrastructure. So for us, practically, over the next 4 years, these are the priorities for each of these pillars. From a market perspective, we're looking at net zero communities. From a policy perspective, green development standards. And then from an infrastructure perspective, we're looking at net zero space heating, or put another way, electrifying our thermal energy needs. We have a lot of opportunities we could draw from, but those were the 3 priority areas. Also, you don't need to have too much of an imagination when you take one idea and you realize, really, they all knot together at some point. So you can't really have a policy solution that doesn't have an impact on the private market or vice versa or on infrastructure. So we all see them knotting together, and that is the essential component of our clean, equitable, and clean, local, and equitable future. Collaboration is extremely important to us. When they say, what does collaboration mean to you? I show them this graph that I'm currently working on. I'm not positive that it'll stay this way, but this is how I'm currently thinking about it. So my son wants to be a professional soccer player, and so I'm helping him think. A good dad would discourage him entirely. I'm not a good dad because that would be cool to have a professional soccer son. He will not be a professional footballer. But in the research, you realize, there's technical skills, tactical skills, physical skills, and mental skills. And then I talked to the other, hockey dads. There's a lot of hockey dad professionals in Waterloo region. They say the exact same thing. And then I talk to people who are in, a choir, and they say it's the same thing. So now I have this theory that what makes a professional soccer player is the same thing that makes a really good, orchestra member or a good choir singer. So if I take those 4 skills and I put them into this matrix, I look at the energy transition as requiring these 4 elements. Technical elements, what is physically possible? Where is the energy? How can we get to it? What technology do we have to get us there? Economic, do we have enough money? Do we have the creative financing mechanisms to actually make this stuff happen? Is there enough political and public will to make it happen? And what my group does is make sure it's strategic, making sure everyone's doing this together and they're not tripping over each other. So in particular, I would look at project-based policies or more technical policies. I would look at formal legal coalitions, and then I would look at developing the infrastructure. We have a lot of environmental groups in our community. They're doing excellent work. They are not energy professionals, but what they are great at is communicating to the schools and to the farmers markets, educating the public at large, saying, hey, this is important, we need to do it. Those people write letters to counselors, so then we have the political interest. And then, of course, there's the for-profit folks, the market-based solutions, and they will be responsible, or they are responsible for the technological and economic solutions, stuff that the municipalities and NGOs just aren't experts in. If you want to modify this, please let me know. Again, I've only been talking about it in this way for a few weeks, and this is a theory that I'm currently developing, so let me know if this would work or not in your community and why, and you can help me refine this maybe. Okay, so that is about WR Community Energy, why and how we work. Now I'll just give some examples of the type of work that we do that lead towards this type of incubation. In particular, these next few slides will be about how we got to prioritizing the electrification of thermal energy. So, as I said, we have 4 utilities in Waterloo Region, 2 natural gas, Enbridge and Kitchener Utilities, and then 2 electricity, Inova and Grandbridge. Aside from gasoline, the vast majority of our energy comes from these 4 utilities, this infrastructure. And then when you break it down by energy, not by natural gas and by kilowatts, but by energy, joules, it looks like this. The vast majority of the 2/3 of the energy in our community comes from natural gas. And then another 1/3 comes from electricity. A bit concerning if you want to decarbonize your entire community like we do. When we break it out by end use, it looks like this. The residential sector takes 40% of our energy, the industrial 30%, and then the commercial 29%. Let's just call it roughly an even split. Okay, so that, we're talking about the energy transition, we're talking about change management. People are gonna lose their jobs or are afraid they're gonna lose their jobs. Their business models will change. These are the people who will be threatened and why and how much, in theory. So when you take these 2 graphs and you smash them together, they look like this fancy Sankey diagram. Is anybody familiar with Sankey diagrams? Do you see those in your reports or in your work? Yeah? Okay. More nods than hands, I get it. But in general, there's our energy source on the left, the converted energy, electricity, natural gas. It flows through the utility company, center right, and then actually how it gets used on the right-hand side. You'll realize how little electricity the industrial sector uses and how much natural gas goes into both the commercial and residential end-use folks. Now, my job straddles the energy people and the land use people. The land use people always talk about the highest, best use of land. Well, what happens if we ask ourselves, well, what is the highest, best use of energy? Natural gas burns at, does anybody know? 2,000 degrees. It takes, 1,500 degrees to melt steel. We have we have an automobile sector in Waterloo Region. That's a relatively good use of electricity. If you have to use electricity, 2,000 degrees to 1,500 degrees, that's pretty good. What I don't like is burning 2,000 degrees of energy to get to 22 degrees in your room. And now you can say, well, you have distribution, so 60 degrees for, depending on how you design your building. It still seems like not the highest, best use of energy to burn 2,000 degrees to get 60 degrees. So then we're thinking, okay, this is a waste, or at least not the highest, best use of this very valuable resource, natural gas. And I say valuable in a carbon budgeting perspective. So let's look at these energy users using this energy, and let's call that low-grade heat. Now, to me, this is the type of heat that you can efficiently and economically decarbonize. So then when we look at our heat as an end user in our community, we'll see that a third of it is electricity, a third of it is low-grade heat, and a third of that is high-grade heat. Now, what we're always trying to do is to convert electricity to heat at an efficient rate. It's called a coefficient of performance. Now, our theory is that if we can get a year-round ratio of 1 to 4, which is reasonable for a heat pump technology, then we would only need to increase our grid from an energy perspective 25% to electrify our entire thermal energy. Now, that's ignoring the nuances between energy and power. This is an energy analysis, not a power analysis, and that will need to come later. But as a starting point, we can think of it that way. Now, if we can decarbonize this low-grade heat, that's 1.2 million tons of GHG emissions in our community, or about 28% of our community's GHG target. So that's a pretty good ratio. My environment friends call this the 1.2 million ton plan. So that is currently how we're thinking about low-grade heat and GHG emissions. So with that in mind, we said, okay, great. Well, what would that look like if we actually had to implement it? So we conducted what we were calling a thermal energy strategic assessment. At first, we wanted to do a strategy, and then we realized we were way over our heads. We can't do a legitimate strategy, but we can ask some important questions, provide preliminary answers, and then talk to the powerful people to help us get to the next level. So we're calling it the Thermal Energy Strategic Assessment, and here's what we found. So number one, heating is a really big deal. It has been a big deal for a long time. It hasn't been getting the attention that it deserves, and this cartoon summarizes it well. It is the largest source of emissions in our community after transportation. And I'll touch more on this in a minute, but we do have an abundance of low-grade thermal energy in our community. And by the way, when I say thermal energy, I mean a constant supply of, let's say, 8 to 10 degrees. The energy that you need to have the coefficient of performance of 4, to have 1 unit of electricity to mean 4 units of heat. So we're looking for a steady supply of roughly 10-degree temperature. The low-carbon thermal energy strategies need to be addressed in an integrated way, that is through policy, infrastructure, and market-based solutions. If it's not integrated, if any one of these 3 pillars goes out on their own, there could be some short-term successes, but we don't think it will meet our long-term goals in as economic of a way as it could. We also think that this strategy needs to be regionally integrated. That is to say, it's one thing to have a district energy system that tackles the downtown core, where we have several 50-story towers beside each other. That's great. But what about the rural communities? A district energy system just won't work for them. So we're trying to match the heat pump. As we've talked about several times today, there's heat pumps, and then there's several sources of fuel that these heat pumps can draw from. Open loop, closed loop, air, ground, tons of them. So let's look at the types of heat pumps overlaid with our land use designation and to find the best heat pump for the right land use. So that's why it needs to be regionally focused. And then we think it's great to have a plan, but we need people and money on the line to make sure it happens. So we are proposing a thermal utility to oversee this thermal strategic development. And we need to tie the opportunities with the right tools that we have. Policies, district energy. Again, district energy is huge. We love district energy in the same way that a lot of people do in the community. It's not going to solve the whole regional problem. It'll just solve a problem. And then programs are extremely important. Retrofit WR, retrofit programs that a lot of you have, heat pump education programs, et cetera. Okay, so where are our thermal heat sources? We're working on a map to answer this problem. There are 2 or 3 layers on this map. The full map has many, many more. The big blobs you see around here are where we have access to certain sources of geo-exchange. So in Waterloo Region, we are sitting on just a very, very large aquifer, about 600 feet below the surface. This is great for us because this allows for what's called an open loop geo-exchange system. This is where you want to take one pipe down, you suck up a bunch of water, you take out the heat, and then you pump it right back down. And you can get 1,000 cooling tons in 2 wells instead of, if it was a closed loop system, maybe 60 wells. So it's cheaper to develop. Maintenance changes a little bit. But for a variety of drinking water and safety issues, our hydrogeologists prefer open loop geoexchange. So generally it's cheaper, it's generally more efficient, and it's safer for our community. So this map looks at where you can economically do an open loop geoexchange system. It also has, we called, someone was talking about, I call it influent, but what did you call it, Jeff? Effluent is leaving, influent is coming in. What did you call the influent? Right, but what do you call the heat from sewage going into the treatment plant? In-pipe waste heat. Let's call it in-pipe waste heat. I prefer influent and effluent, but anyway, in-pipe sewage heat is in green. So these are the sewage plants, sewage lines greater than 600 millimeters, so that can be economically extracted from heat with flow rates over 100 liters per second. So industry tells us that's the infrastructure that you need to economically take out heat. So 10, 20 meters on either side of those green lines, you have access to however many heating and cooling tons. We have tons of effluent opportunities as well. We have 3 sizable wastewater treatment plants, 17 megawatts, roughly the same as Jeff's Mississauga project. So for context, the University of Waterloo needs currently about 19 megawatts of thermal energy. They're going through a retrofit program, so they will need 13 in a few years. So one wastewater treatment plant can heat an entire university campus with 40,000 students. So tremendous opportunity there. Okay, so we talked about this thermal assessment. What do you do with it? So to me, there's 4 very important components here. Yeah? The GIS department internally, yeah. We hired a consultant to help us do the qualifications to know what to map, but it was done internally. So there's 4 major bits. One is the strategic assessment that I just talked about. This is mostly done. We have operating principles, general opportunities. We're now in the phase where we are socializing that with our community people. Fortunately for me, our CAOs learned about my work and invited me to present to all of the CAOs. That's perfect, right? At some point, we will need to go beyond this assessment and actually break down the numbers, look at the difference between energy and power, really break it down and develop a proper business strategy. We'll call that the thermal strategy. We're not ready for that yet, and I think that if we did that right now, we will miss the opportunities that are right in front of us. So I'm proposing that we sort of put that on the side burner, and we instead focus on what would a thermal utility look like in Waterloo region. So for that, we have established a steering committee with all of the universities and utilities and commissioners involved, so that's excellent. As we are thinking about the thermal utility, we will start asking ourselves some good detailed questions. And then from those questions, I believe, then we can develop the strategy in a meaningful way. Now, we talked about the various forms of matching the heat pumps to the land use. District energy is one of those heat pump land use marriages. And I expect that will be the first thing that the steering group will look at in detail. We have about 6 depends how you define district energy, but we have at least 6 areas where energy is shared between one property to the next. So we'll look at those in more detail and node developments. Okay, so that's all for the thermal energy bit. From a harmonized green development standard perspective, we just finished milestone 1. This is the idea. We got all of the community folks together. We asked if there was interest. There was. They said that a green development standard is worth doing in our community, that we want to harmonize it, we want to do it together, and we want to be ambitious, which is to say we want to match Toronto's and Ottawa's standards. They even said that because we have the electric distribution companies working with us with on-bill refinancing and on-bill analysis, we can actually even be more ambitious on the electricity side of things. So that's where we're at right now. I'm currently trying to hire somebody to lead this work. If anybody's tried to hire anybody in the last little bit, you'll know how hard it is. So if you know of any really stellar planners who want to do some really stellar work, I will send them the job description. And I'll just leave it at that, really. So the community energy investment strategy was always a 25-year plan. WR Community Energy implements that plan, and we've broken it out into 6 different terms to council. Every November, we have an event highlighting our success to our 50 to 100 most important stakeholders. Term 1 finished. We've set our vision. We know a little bit about how we work and where we want to go. And Term 2 just started with this most recent version of council. It goes until 2026, and that's where we'll be focusing on our heating strategy. And what comes after that, we don't know yet. We'll figure out the progress we make in the next 4 years. So that's all for me. Thank you very much. Yeah. And I think we have time for some questions.
Thanks for the presentation. I can't help myself but ask about your open loop concept for the heat pumps. I've come across the limitation to put water back into the ground in my past career. These are pump and dump systems, right?
Yes.
So is there any issues with pumping back into the ground with those strategies? Really great map that you had there showing all the heat sources and everything. But can you pump back into the ground? Is that allowed by your local area municipalities?
So in our community, about 50 feet below ground is where our drinking aquifers are. We don't mess with that at all. About 100 feet below that, that's where we have this briny aquifer stuff. So there's no life that we know of down there. So that's what it's not drinking water. But the proof is in the pudding. We have, 10 closed loop systems in our community. They are operating, I know some of them good, some of them not good. So, some of them average, some of them not good. None of them are excellent. We have 3 open loop systems, and all of them are overproducing. And some of them, in fact, want to build right next to them because now they have a free source of energy. But our hydrogeologists are very careful with our work on that.
Thank you, Maggie, for this presentation. I really followed and I learned a lot. So mine is a small question regarding the structure. I understand it is a community program and there is a governance committee. So I'm wondering, how is the participation of the community in the leadership, especially in this governance? How do they participate in there? And I see, as you're explaining, it's a bit technical, a bit complicated as well. So when it comes to governance, there are elements like participation, inclusion, engaging in the leadership. So like to hear how is that managed? Thank you.
Such a good question. Thank you for that. If we didn't have such a strong not-for-profit environment sector in our community, I would need to be much more involved in community engagement. As such, because we have so many not-for-profits, they do so much of that work. And they're my former employer, truthfully, so we have an excellent relationship with them, and so we often talk about our talking points. In terms of democracy and transparency, I present to councils all of the time. And so there's the democratic process at that point as well.
I just had another question about wastewater treatment plants. I'm just curious because I formerly worked for a wastewater treatment plant, and they would take their digester gas to help fuel the boilers on site. And I'm just wondering, relatively, taking heat from effluent, for instance, is that like a lot of the gas was actually just being burned as well? So I don't even know, I'm not sure why they burned so much of it and don't utilize it in other capacities, but I guess I'm just curious if this effluent heat capture is how economical it is, and why maybe certain areas are not looking into it, or what might motivate them to look into that?
Yeah, such a good. Can I maybe answer that question more holistically? Because you asked another really awesome question about what happens downstream. So generally, there's 3 or 4 types of energy recovery from a wastewater system: influent, effluent. There's this thing called like in-pipe turbines, which are great in theory. They don't produce practically any energy, so we don't really think about that. And then the 4th one is, as you mentioned, like the biogas generation. Our 2 largest plants in Waterloo Region do that already. So they capture the gas, and then it creates the system. So yeah. And then from a downstream perspective, to answer your previous question, which I loved. So we are largely landlocked. We have Grand River energy flowing through our community. We take our wastewater, we treat it, and then it flows out at 10 degrees all year round, even in the wintertime. It's more prone to algae blooms and that sort of stuff downstream. So if we can take even 1 or 2 degrees out from that effluent, there's some environmental benefits. That being said, I'm not a natural environmentalist. I don't know. That's just kind of what I heard. Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Matt, for that. That was wonderful to hear what Waterloo is doing. So we have a short break. And then after the break, we'll just be sort of going over some next steps for the Niagara Climate Change Action Network. And we should have you out of here by 3:30. So take a quick break, have some refreshments, and we'll come back and end the day.